Welcome back to the Empire Builders Podcast. Recording live this morning from the North Patio at the Wizard Academy Classroom Tower.
I always get turned around, so this is north.
That's north.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. I always get turned around.
The
here.
causeway, the little the ditch thing that runs.
Oh, right, of course. That's east-west, of course.
No,
yeah.
that's north-south.
Oh, right.
Directly
okay,
north-south.
Right,
if you stand in the middle of it and look up, you can see the North Star over the... And so we're on the other side.
Right, of course we are. Okay,
yeah.
I always get turned around.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
It's taken me a while. Anyway, we're recording a podcast.
Yes, we are.
And we're sitting outdoors, and just as I was hitting the record button, you said, Spin Master.
Spin Master.
This is an exercise bike.
Toy company.
What am I thinking? Spin cycle? Like, first of all, I don't play with toys, and I don't ride exercise bikes, so I'm at a loss.
So they are best known for Paw Patrol. And you wouldn't know about that either, because you don't have any little kids in your life.
No,
anybody who's got little kids in their life, no Paw Patrol.
All right, well, I am all ears.
Give you an idea how big the Paw Patrol franchise is? 14 billion.
Wait, 14 billion?
Billion in sales when you add all their stuff up.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And these are toys?
Yes.
Okay.
They are toys. And they are a Canadian company, and my niece used to work for them.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So this was actually kind of a little extra fun to do.
So some insider info.
Yeah, well, not really, but yeah, they're a Canadian company and quite a little success story.
Little, yeah.
Then we'll talk about later. They also went on to have bought some other brands, such as Rubik's Cube. They now own Rubik's Cube.
All right.
Yeah. It was founded by Ronan Harari, Antoine Rabi, and Ben Verity. They started the business in the late 1990s, and around that time, patterns of play does not change. Okay. Toys might change, the way kids play with things, and the way even adults play with things don't change. And so the key is to find things that fit into those play patterns. That idea has basically led this company to be one of the greatest success stories in the toy space in the last 20 years. Yeah, and this whole idea, the key to find things that fit in those play patterns, basically led to the creation of Paw Patrol, which is their biggest success, is it was built very intentionally. Okay. It was very thoughtful, very intentional in terms of what they did. So as you listen to the story, it all led to the knowledge that built Paw Patrol. So in the late 1990s, toys really started to change, but the pattern of play did not. The key to their success on Paw Patrol was recognizing these play patterns, which is what made them, quite frankly, the most successful toy brand in the last 20 years, and it was built very intentionally.
Play patterns didn't change, so kids are playing the same as we...
Yes, as they always have. The toys have changed, but the patterns of play have not.
So really, we never really needed to depart from just sticks.
Well, keep that in mind when we're going through this. There's an interesting stick story.
Okay.
One of the founders, Ronan Harari, so he moved to Toronto when he was 5 from South Africa, and his dad ran a carpet business. And he was an average student, but he had a learning disability, dysgraphia. And dysgraphia is where the hands cannot keep up with how the brain is thinking.
Okay.
And basically, it's almost like he describes it, there's like this constant rebooting that's going on. The brain is wired slightly differently, but for him, visual detail is very high, right? Like in terms of his attention to those details. He went to the University of Western Ontario, and he knew from a young age he wanted to own his own business because of that endless potential. So he, of course, took business in college. And while in college, he started this little poster business where what they would do is take pictures of frosh wheat, print these collages, and sell advertising. Went to 5 different universities, basically made $100,000 doing it. So, did really well.
Yeah.
Then he saw this item that his mother brought from Israel, and it was a knockoff of the Chia Pet. Remember the Chia Pets?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Except this one was kind of more like a ball with sawdust that you immersed in water, and the seeds would grow. And his mother had read that in Israel that this was a big craze in the country. So he decided, I got to make a version in Canada and call it Earth Buddies.
Okay.
So he goes to Kmart, buys some seed, pantyhose, gets some sawdust. It's 1994, and they make 5,000 of these for Mother's Day. That was the plan.
Okay.
And his sister-in-law made that.
So pantyhose with sawdust and seeds.
Yes.
Okay.
And they made this contraption that would allow them to make it at scale. They found this small factory space that they could use, the 3 of them. And they set up on the street, and they sold it on the street. And they basically sold like 800 of the 5,000 that they made.
Oh, man. Okay.
But they then also, through their mom, found a gift distributor. The company sold toys, Samco Sales. And in a couple of weeks, they had an order for 26,000 pieces at Walmart Canada.
Oh, all right.
So they're off to the races. And they had this fun idea where they would go to homeless shelters to find people to work in the warehouse.
Okay.
Because it was like this really simple job. Then they got this massive order from Kmart. And it's really funny how they got this Kmart order. It's a real story of kind of luck and persistence. So Antoine, when he was backpacking a year before this in Europe, met this guy who was really connected. And Antoine called this guy when they had this product going on, especially when they sold it into Walmart. And they said, do you know anybody at Kmart? At the time, Kmart was big. I know Kmart's not big today. And he said, sure, I can introduce you to a guy. So he introduces the guy, and they travel down to meet him. Turns out that the contact's not a buyer, just a guy who works at Kmart.
Just a guy, runs the blue light special light.
But instead of leaving, they wander around the building.
Uh-huh.
And they find the buyer. And then they say to the buyer, hey, could we meet with you? The buyer said, sure, you can meet with me at 3:30. And they're like, okay. They still choose not to leave the building because they may never get in again.
Yeah. So you got to just kind of wander around a bit.
Now, what they also noticed was she had 8 other versions of Earth Buddies sitting on the desk at different names.
Oh, the buyer did?
Yes.
So lots of other people selling the same thing. Yeah.
So immediately Antoine was like, yeah, I'm going to need to drop the price to beat out the others because he suddenly realizes she has lots of different options. And they decided to start with an order of 48,000 pieces, and pretty soon they're doing 500,000 pieces through Kmart. They had to move to a bigger facility. At the peak, they're doing 17,500 orders a day.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
Sawdust, pantyhose, seeds.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it. So they make $1.8 million in year one.
Packaging probably costs more than the ingredients.
So it's 1995, and they decide, you know what, we're going to focus on toys. We've had this great success with toys, and they saw these things called devil sticks, which is basically where you've got a stick, you got 2 other sticks.
Oh, sure, you're keeping the third stick in the air. Yeah.
Whole thing about playing with sticks, Dave.
Yeah. You're not juggling till that third stick's in the air.
Yeah. So I'm being played with, so they decide to package up these devil sticks, and they go to a big toy fair in New York, and he's doing the demo himself because he played with them in high school, and Toys R Us picks them up. And it was just great timing. And again, it was another public domain product.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to start doing things that were not public domain. And it turns out that Ben, his girlfriend's a member of the Irwin family, Irwin Toys.
Okay.
And what they found out was that there's this whole network of toy inventors out there. We've talked about some of these in our podcast.
The Secret Toy Inventor Guild.
Right. No, but remember how many of the toy inventors that we talked about in past podcasts?
Sure.
Right? That don't work for Mattel. They take ideas to Mattel.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? There's these toy inventors out there? Yes. So they start traveling around meeting these toy inventors. Now, of course, the first thing if you're going to meet a toy inventor they're going to bring out is a dusty old idea that they were never able to sell to anybody.
Uh-huh.
But they come across one that they think is a really great idea.
Stay tuned. We're going to wrap up this story and tell you how to apply this lesson to your business right after this.
Hey, Rick, how's it going?
Great.
Great.
Yeah, I just had an amazing 90 minutes.
You did?
With the host of the Empire Builders podcast.
Really?
You've heard the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I finally took him up on the starter session.
So you drank the Kool-Aid.
Guzzled it.
How did it taste?
Well, he answered those questions that were keeping me up at night. Now I know what I need to do. So it tasted like strawberries.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, and you can book your free starter session on this podcast website.
Okay, Dave. Say, and they haven't missed a thing.
Let's pick up our story where we left off, and trust me, you haven't missed a thing.
Now, of course, the first thing if you're going to meet a toy inventor they're going to bring out is a dusty old idea that they were never able to sell to anybody.
Uh-huh.
But they come across one that they think is a really great idea. And it's this airplane that you pump up. You pump it up with air, and it flies for about 45 seconds. And it has these pistons and everything that go, and it makes this really cool sound. And they went, this is great. So they basically licensed that, and they call it Air Hogs.
Air Hogs. Okay.
And they also did discover that, like, basically every toy company on the planet had turned it down. And it took them 2 years to create a prototype because it actually was kind of hard to make.
Now,
So they go to China, they find a factory, and in the first year they do great. 1998, they launch Air Hogs, $35 million in sales.
All right.
And one of the keys is that they managed to convince people to do, because the sound was a big deal, was have it somewhere where it was set up that kids could pump it up and hear the noise that it made.
Oh, sure.
So it was this really creative display that really helped people hear the sound of the motor. And look, this now kicked open the door for lots of other future products, because now they've had this success with one, so toy inventors are really interested in talking to them. And they figured they could do more with flying toys. And they're getting now pitched 1,000 products a year.
From the toy makers.
From the toy creators.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And they also had a bunch of products that failed. They did this small little BMX bike thing that didn't work. But what they realized is the toy business is very iterative. In other words, it's like you create a toy and then you create a variation of the toy. The play patterns don't change.
Sure.
And there's 11 categories in toys, and they all have a way that they're played with. 2001, they create this thing called Key Charm Cuties that totally bombs. And the problem is it's up against Polly Pocket, up against Mattel, and it was not as good, not designed as well, didn't have the Polly Pocket story. And they started going to Japan to look for ideas, because here's the other thing they noticed. Toys in Japan are years ahead. Japan's really good at things that are strange,
Yeah.
that may not be normal to us. They're very good with different. And so what they decide is they literally move somebody in 2005 to Japan to basically create licensing. They want to come up with something from Japan. And they come up with this cool game. Now, it turns out, the game was created in North America, but they needed to go to Japan to figure out how to make it. Bokugan. And basically, it's marbles meet Transformers. So essentially, there's this metal card, and if your marble hits the card, the marble pops open and a little figure appears.
Wow, okay.
So it's like Pokemon, right?
All right.
So basically, it's an action figure, inside of a marble. It was invented here, but they had to go to Japan to figure out how to make it, because Japan's really good at the micro toys. And they sit down with the president of Sega, who speaks no English, and they end up partnering with them. But what they figure out is, here's one of the things that they learned from looking at this. They need to launch a cartoon with the game. And it became a $1 billion franchise. It blew up. Like, in 2008, essentially, they changed their company into a media company.
Wow.
Because, you do the cartoon along with it.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. 2010, Bokugan is half of their sales. They hit $950 million in 2010 as a business. 2013, they're $500 million.
Ooh.
Yes. And the product lines that followed did not connect. They're losing money. They need to come up with another hit. Now, because here's the interesting thing when you're in a business, and we see this. No one builds a business plan with the expectation that sales are going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
Sales are always going one direction, and that is up, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's always the case. What they realized looking at toys out there, the most successful toys have a cartoon with them, have a story to go with.
Okay, yeah.
So they start, before making the toy, they start sending out to businesses an RFP for a cartoon.
Okay.
Story
first.
And the guy who created Bob the Builder, Chief Chapman, responds with this idea that has these dogs that are these rescue dogs that go do these adventures.
Okay.
And they look at it and go, okay, that's a great story. Kids would connect with that. But how do we make it a toy? Well, transformation is a big thing. Let's add backpacks that transform and a doghouse that transforms. Now we got a toy.
All right.
They launched this in 2013, takes off quickly. 2015, Spin Master goes public. They doing $2 billion in sales. They decide with this to also go out and buy existing brands. They buy Etch-a-Sketch. They buy Cardinal Games, which has got things like Rubik's Cube. They bought Swimways, which is a company that does swim toys.
Wow.
They now have 20,000 different products and do all this media.
Acme Conglomerated Industrial Galactic Toy Company.
Yeah, out of Canada.
All right.
We're taking over the world, man.
Yeah, you are.
But here's the thing that I thought was really interesting. Their biggest success came from looking at it and going, wow, the toys out there that have done really well have this story to it.
Yeah.
Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
Well, Lego didn't take off till they started having stories with
Right.
them and building iconic things, right? That had story tied to
But
them.
think about this. They said, okay, we're going to create a really great story. Let's send out an RFP, create a cartoon, and we're going to send it out to these top storytellers, and then we're going to look at it and go, which ones can we turn into a toy?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just looked at it and said, this is how systematic and thoughtful and strategic they were on launching Paw Patrol, which is now, a $14 billion franchise.
Sure. That's a great story. I've got a question for you that might be a little side trail off into the weeds. You mentioned there's 11 ways to play.
Yes. We're not going to go through all 11.
No, but cite a source for me. Tell me what book to read.
About
these 11 sources, because I think this has. I like seeing things like this and saying, okay, well, if I read about that, maybe there's 11 ways to interact with customers for even a service business.
Yeah.
That is related to these 11 ways people play.
It's interesting. I just heard him talk about it in an interview. Just heard the folks from Spin Master talk about it, and they walked through like what the 11 were and how it shapes things and whatnot.
Well, maybe this is a future episode we're talking about.
Maybe, because you know what, that would be interesting, is just to go down and explore that. And what I'll do is I'll reach out to Rob and my niece and sort of say, hey, this 11 play pattern thing, because no doubt part of the Spin Master culture. So I'm going to explore that.
Awesome. Well, that was a Spin Master. What an amazing company.
Yeah.
Canadians, eh?
Canadians, eh? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting, it's story, cartoon, transformation. And that is the direction that they went thoughtfully ahead of time, saying this is what we got to do.
I think what's really cool is that there are some things that just have some basic patterns that are maybe skewed in a slightly different direction depending on the industry. Like our partner Roy Williams, the guy that published his books is a guy named Ray Bard, and his philosophy of business books has always been every successful business book has 4 characteristics, right? It's nuts and bolts, a big idea, entertainment,
yes,
lots of it, and hope.
Yes.
Right? And if you can deliver those 4 things in a book, then you're going to more than likely have a successful book. So in toys, there's kind of this same pattern somewhere, right? It's buried in there, and if you can find it, you're going to do all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that story. And I look forward to our next episode, wherever we record it.
It's been kind of fun.
It's been fun sitting outside recording, even with the leaf blowers and the helicopters.
Yeah.
Same thing. Helicopter, leaf blower.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's been nice weather, too. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
All right.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, David.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please share us, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and leave us a big, fat, juicy 5-star rating and review at Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to schedule your own 90-minute empire building session, you can do it at empirebuildingprogram.com.